tonight, we'll discuss Formula E. McLaren looking at entering the Formula E League. That would be really exciting considering Audi's leaving. Plus, Formula One. Bahrain will be the season opener. We know China's off the schedule. Imola's in. What about Portugal? Is that coming on the schedule? And NASCAR has the Gen Z crowd. We know that. Now the question is, can they keep that lead over everyone else? Right here on Grid Tonight.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. I'm Kobe Lambeth from the PodiumFinish.net, and with me, as always, Joe Samaniego. Please participate in the chat room or leave a comment. We'd definitely love to hear what you have to say. And we'll start off with positive news we heard on Monday involving Formula E and McLaren.
Big time positive news for Formula E. Of course, we all know the news about Audi, BMW, both departing Formula E. Well, there's definitely an option where it looks like McLaren might be entering in. McLaren signed an option to potentially enter Formula E in Season 9, which is the 2022-2023 season. They're continuing to evaluate new motorsports platforms. The news of McLaren's interest in Formula E doesn't guarantee that we'll see them on the grid by 2022, but definitely it's a very big news for Formula E considering the big news of Audi and then BMW leaving. Of course, Formula E, their first season opening race was postponed, so now we're looking at Saudi Arabia being the host opening race, and it's going to be a nighttime doubleheader event. Now, of course, the big news of essentially McLaren entering is really huge for Formula E right now. However, there are not a lot of series right now for McLaren to be looking at, and they cannot be in the series right now because they are the battery supplier for Formula E and for all the teams. So a little bit of a conflict of interest right there. So we're not going to see them enter just yet, but their contract to being the official battery supplier is going to run up. And once that's out, we could potentially see Formula E and McLaren racing there. Kobe, with Audi and BMW opting out, does this possibility of McLaren racing a team in Formula E come at the right time?
Yes, it does, Joe. I feel like that this is definitely the kind of news that Formula E needed. I know everyone was in shock when they heard that Audi and BMW would be pulling out of the series with their factory programs, and people wondered what in the world was next with Formula E. But now with the possibility of McLaren looking to join the series, that has to make all of the executives in Formula E smile. And while this does not necessarily guarantee that we will see McLaren in Formula E, it really shows how committed it really shows how committed McLaren is to potentially joining Formula E one day, because otherwise they wouldn't have signed the option to potentially enter the series. And I do think it shows that McLaren will do their homework, and when it's time to make a decision, they'll decide whether or not to enter Formula E or not. And I actually had no idea that Formula E had an option where manufacturers could sign an option to enter the series. So if they decide to go forward with the program and get the green light, they'll be able to go racing.
Able to go racing, that's a big win for the fans. And of course, one of the big things with BMW, when they made their announcement, of course, a lot of people are still expecting and ready Autosport to be involved, so we don't have that void in the grid. But the potential void of Audi not having those two cars, McLaren could be in that spot. That's a big win for Formula E. I think this is really going to be something where this quiets some of the doubters of Formula E. Of course, Formula E, we know there's been a lot of folks that criticize the fan boost attack mode, Formula E being all electric, and then with all the news of BMW, Audi looking to leave, essentially leaving, a lot of people question it, is Formula E on secure grounds? This is a big boost of confidence to say McLaren is in it for the long run. So definitely this is going to be a big win for Formula E fans that follow the sport, and definitely encourage all our viewers, if you are really into Formula E or want to learn more about Formula E, all our friends at Formula E Zone, Jack and the team there, did a really great job at covering Formula E. Meanwhile, this past Sunday, we had another incident online in which Hailie Deegan was participating in an iRacing event that was streaming live on the internet. During the event, she used the R word, which is a slur against mentally disabled people. She said it while referencing to another racer behind her. This sparked an online outrage as this was being streamed over the internet. Later that night, Hailie did release a statement apologizing for the word and saying her actions were stupid. Ford issued a statement acknowledging that they are aware of Hailie Deegan using that slur as well. NASCAR then ordered Hailie Deegan to attend and complete sensitivity training before the season begins. This is the first time Deegan is attending the training, but she has a string of online incidents that come off as insensitive or offensive. This includes a September incident where she called the virus that has caused this global pandemic a hoax. This resulted in Deegan's podcast losing Geico as a sponsor. The young 19-year-old is racing in the NASCAR Truck Series full-time and is seen as a potential star in NASCAR. This is all occurring during a time period as NASCAR is expanding their presence to a more diverse audience in the future. It is worth noting that NASCAR mandating Hailie Deegan to attend this training is significant. 2020, Max Verstappen used the same word and initially didn't apologize for using that word. Later, he did apologize to Lance Stroll, who he used the word towards, and said he didn't meant to hurt anyone with that statement. Now, NASCAR has set a strict precedent that essentially the R word is not tolerated in NASCAR.
And next we're gonna look at the Formula One schedule change. The season open in the Australian Grand Prix has been postponed to a later date. Originally, the event was supposed to take place in March, but it's been moved to November 21st in between the races at Brazil and Saudi Arabia. Now, Bahrain will be the season opening race on March 28th. Last year's Australian Grand Prix got canceled altogether. Right now, Australia has some of the toughest pandemic restrictions in the world. Of course, a lot can change with the pandemic between now and November. Do you think we'll even race in Melbourne this year?
That's a really good question. Will we race in Melbourne? No, Formula One is hoping to. It gave us a ton of time, essentially, with Australia being much later in the year. But with this pandemic, it's just really up in the air. And of course, as we know, Australia, Southern Hemisphere, they're going to be in a different season compared to the United States. Of course, November, that's fall, we're getting close to winter. There, they're going to be getting closer to summer. So it's going to be really interesting to see. If it works out, great, good move on Formula One. If it doesn't work out, then it just makes it really hard because this is a street circuit. And just, I think it's really iffy if we're going to have an early race in Australia.
And another change on the schedule is the addition of Imola. This race is scheduled for April 18th. Last year, Imola returned to Formula One in a revised schedule, and with Imola coming back, the Chinese Grand Prix has been postponed as discussions remain ongoing. And just like the Australian Grand Prix, we didn't have a Chinese Grand Prix last year. And there's still one slot open on the schedule for a Grand Prix on May 2nd, and this date could potentially go to Portimao in Portugal. With the uncertainty and a worsening global pandemic to consider, more races could be in danger in the coming months. Joe, would you be surprised if the recently revised Formula One calendar doesn't see any more changes by the end of the year?
That would be a huge surprise. It's still going to take a lot of effort with the tracks, Formula One, the FIA, to make this schedule work. 23 races. Portugal, we know we have the backup tracks. That's really great. The big thing, of course, how each place, each country with the vaccination rollout starts seeing everything work out. If we see countries that, in my opinion, the vaccination rollout goes faster and faster, I wouldn't be surprised if Formula One, okay, we're going to this, I'm going to make an example, say United States, by the time to come here for the US Grand Prix, the vaccination has been really rolling out, cases are low, we know there's another race that's been postponed, maybe a second race at COTA. So I totally could see where we might still have a more complete season. The question is, where will all the races occur?
And Formula One isn't the only series making changes due to the pandemic. MotoGP canceled the February preseason test at Sepang in Malaysia. However, the preseason test at Qatar is still scheduled for March 10th through 12th, a couple of weeks before the season opening Qatar Grand Prix. Once again, this shows us that 2021 will likely be similar to 2020 in some regards. You think the schedule is set in stone, but change is almost inevitable. And I guarantee that we'll continue to see more schedule changes over the next several months all across the motorsports world. Doesn't matter what discipline. Contingency plans are a must in the current environment. MotoGP is already doing their part by having 3 reserve tracks lined up in case there are cancellations. Tracks in Portugal, Indonesia, and Russia on standby when MotoGP needs to revert to Plan B.
This past Sunday, the National Football League aired a playoff game on Nickelodeon. The channel, known for children to younger teens programming, hosted its first professional major sporting event. A move to capture a younger audience that hasn't picked up interest in American football like past generations, especially after research between concussions and football players. Now, all major sports and entertainment brands are looking into engaging younger audiences to secure interest in sports long term. We did an unscientific poll on Twitter recently. On our Twitter poll, we asked the question, how old were you when you watched your first motorsport event, either in person or television? 80% of you were under the age of 12 years old. The second highest group was 13 to 17-year-old at 14%, and only 6% of the people polled were between the ages of 18 to 29 years old. That means out of the people in the poll, 94% were under the age of 18 when they saw their first motorsport event. Now, of course, this poll was not scientific. However, it was from our Twitter. So a lot of times we do have mostly race fans, people within motorsports, and we did use the major hashtags for motorsports. So most likely these were motorsports fans that were participating in the poll. And we would definitely like to hear from you. Comment with how old you were when you saw your first motorsport event on television or in person. Most likely you were probably under the age of 18. The only sporting entertainment brand to make Morning Consultant's list of growing brands with the Gen Z crowd was NASCAR. This is significant because NASCAR has wanted to get a younger audience for quite some time. The 18 to 23-year-old crowd, and with the accessibility to racing being harder compared to traditional stick and ball sports, NASCAR is in the driver's seat to get a younger generation interested in NASCAR. But how did NASCAR get here? Who is this younger crowd? And how serious is the new crowd competition? Could we see NASCAR race on Disney Channel someday with Daryl Cartrip and David Hubscap calling the race? NASCAR was one of the first major motorsport series to jump on social media big time with Facebook and Twitter, the traditional platforms. YouTube became popular as you could even find NASCAR content from loyal fans. Now, NASCAR is on almost every platform, including Snapchat, TikTok, and connecting with fans. A younger audience are generally not spending time on Facebook as much as they are on TikTok or other social media posts. To give you an idea of NASCAR's size, they have 3.4 million followers on Twitter, while IndyCar has 341,000 followers. TikTok, NASCAR has 837,000 followers. IndyCar has a blank account with only 305 followers. 60% of TikTok users are under the age of 24 years old. They will see at some point NASCAR on their For You page and either follow or skip, but even skipping, they saw a NASCAR post, and that's NASCAR's goal, to be seen and hopefully at least be remembered. This is key with Gen Z crowd under the age of 23 or 24 years old, being seen and remembered. According to Pew Research, Gen Z are people born after 1996. They are the most racially and ethnically diverse group than any prior generations, including millennials. They have been around technology their whole lives, unaware of life before the internet most likely. They take in news and entertainment differently than prior generations, mainly on smartphones and portable devices. So NASCAR is already in position to be seen by Gen Z. Now, everyone's going to try to catch up. As Gen Z crowds get older, data shows that most loyal fans of sports and entertainment starts young. The NFL game on Nickelodeon, Formula One has been active in trying to catch up to NASCAR on social media. Currently, right now, Formula One has 1.3 million followers on TikTok. But remember, Formula One is a more global sport than NASCAR. NASCAR does have a hold on American viewers currently. Don't be surprised to see NASCAR or other motorsport series expand their presence with younger crowds or even alter their events to be more suited for Gen Z and younger groups. So lastly, could we see NASCAR on the Disney Channel? Disney did acquire multiple Fox-owned entertainment properties, but did not acquire Fox News nor Fox Sports. So unless ABC, ESPN was to return, which both are owned by Disney, chances are slim. However, Comcast and NBC Universal could look into options, and depending on NFL ratings on Nickelodeon, don't be surprised if NASCAR starts looking at this option as well. Do you see in the future any motorsport series catching up to NASCAR with Gen Z outreach?
Well, if I had to pick a series, I think maybe Formula One. Just by scrolling through what we call Formula One Twitter, I see a lot of Gen Z fans tweeting during the races and about all of the events happening in Formula One, whether it's something happening on the track or off the track. I know that Twitter is a really small portion of the Formula One fan base, but based on that small sliver, it really seems there's a lot of interest in Formula One from Gen Z. So honestly, if I had to pick one series, it'd definitely be Formula One. I actually don't think they're that far behind from NASCAR, but it's really nice seeing a lot of younger people get into NASCAR, especially with some of the older audience thinning out.
And you bring up a good point with Formula One Twitter as well as on YouTube. We know F Series Fridays, a group of female content creators on YouTube that are dedicated to Formula One, have their series. A lot of great series out there from Gen Z. Formula One, NASCAR, those two seem to be leading the way. And then, of course, once you get to the stick and ball sports, you do see other content. One of the big things, I know a lot of people, we've been seeing IndyCar grow lately, but it seems like with the IndyCar growth, they're not really utilizing social media to capture the audience, which is really interesting. It's going to be something to watch to see how IndyCar proceeds in the future, and they try something a little different to try to get more audiences watching IndyCar, and especially their big race, the Indianapolis 500. Now, 2021, we got some big news. Today, Gracie Trotter made it official in regards to her 2021 plans. She'll be joining Venturini Motorsports part-time in the ARCA Menard Series, driving the number 15 and 25 Toyota, sponsored by Mobil 1. Last year, she made history becoming the first female to win an ARCA-sanctioned race. Gracie is coming up and part of the NASCAR Drive for Diversity program. Last season, she was in the ARCA West Series, the Toyota back-end. It is worth noting that Mobil 1 sponsorship with Gracie, of course, Mobil 1 currently sponsors Stewart Haas Racing, which is in Fords. It'll be very interesting to see how her 2021 season plays out, and if there could be a new sponsorship deal long-term between Mobil 1 and Gracie.
Yeah, 2021 shaping up to be a great season for Gracie Trotter in competitive equipment in the ARCA Menard Series, especially after her huge win in the ARCA Menard Series West last year. And 2021 is going to be a big year for another driver entering NASCAR. And here's a driver that a lot of people may not have heard of. And 22-year-old Devon Rouse from Burlington, Iowa, has recently emerged as a driver to watch in 2021. He'll be participating in the ARCA Menard Series preseason test at Daytona on Friday and Saturday. At the test, there will be single car runs and limited pack drafting. Rouse has been racing for most of his life and recently competed on dirt, racing sprint cars. He's an open LGBTQ race car driver, which is extremely rare in motorsports. On Twitter yesterday, a lot of people discovered Devon Rouse for the very first time, including myself. Many were shocked to discover that we have an openly gay driver looking to enter the NASCAR world. NASCAR has been working very hard to make the sport more inclusive for people from all walks of life. Joe, how significant is it to have a member of the LGBTQ community working towards racing in NASCAR?
It is very significant. I know, especially when it comes to when we talked about what Bubba Wallace is doing, essentially showing I could do this, I could compete in NASCAR, inspire young African American kids to go into motorsports. The W Series, that's inspiring a lot of women. We know recently NASCAR, they've recognized Pride Month this past June. Now we have our first openly driver that's in the LGBTQA community that is racing. That's a very big deal for Devon to come out. That was just huge because for anybody coming out, that's a really big moment to share a very big private moment of your life to the world. So definitely support Devon for doing that. Very brave of him. Now he's going to be seen as a leader in the LGBTQA community. Of course, we know there's organizations like Racing Pride, which is advocating to try to make motorsports a more inclusive environment for the LGBTQA community. Now that we have Devon racing, this is going to give something where, especially for young fans that could relate to Devon, a person say, if he could do it, I could do it. I know we talked about Charlie Martin quite a lot. Now we have one here in the NASCAR in the United States, and I think it's really exciting for all of motorsports.
Yes, it's definitely a very exciting moment for motorsports, and I know we talked a lot about Bubba Wallace back in the summertime, and how for the Black community, how it's really huge, and it helps attract other Black fans to see someone who looks just like them, and that help draw in some more fans to the sport, and I think the same thing is going to happen with Devon Rouse as well. He's going to bring new fans in the sport, and other fans who are also a part of the community. They're going to feel more comfortable to be themselves. And Steven Rose was actually the first openly gay NASCAR driver in 2003. Rose only competed in 2 career Truck Series races with the best finish of 21st at Martinsville. At the moment, Rouse is only scheduled to test at Daytona and ARCA and run 2 NASCAR Camping World Truck Series dirt races at Bristol and Knoxville. Considering Devon's experience on dirt, is it a smart move to focus on those 2 truck races instead of going somewhere like Martinsville and asphalt short track?
It is very smart. One of the big things, of course, with this dirt experience, you're going to have drivers there that mainly done asphalt racing, got up to the truck levels. If you don't have the greatest equipment on dirt, but you have the dirt experience, you can really shine, make your name for yourself. For Devon, this is our 2 huge opportunities that he couldn't let go by. And I think it's really smart of him to focus on these 2 races. And of course, Daytona, big, essentially the world center of racing, that's also a very smart move as well.
In a video message, Devon Rouse thanked the fans for such a positive response to him entering the NASCAR community, and he did note that it's not easy or common to see an LGBTQ driver in motorsports, especially NASCAR. He also admitted that he's looking at doing 20-plus races in the ARCA Menard Series, which is huge for a driver from dirt racing to get seat time in a stock car on asphalt. The most important thing I took away from Rouse's message is him recognizing how big of a moment this is. He said that he hopes to be a role model and influencer and hopes of promoting more diversity in the sport, bringing us all together. And I saw the reaction from fans myself on Twitter. They were absolutely ecstatic and over the moon to learn about Devon. As his presence continues to grow in the NASCAR community, do you think it will convince more industry people and fans alike to feel more comfortable about being themselves?
Yes, that's the big thing. It will just make people know that they are welcome for who they are. They don't have to try to hide it. They don't have to worry about being discriminated. They're welcome. And especially in motorsports, I know we say this quite often, the beauty of motorsports, anybody could get behind the wheel. Anybody can hone their skills and become competitive. It doesn't matter what gender you are, what race you are. It's one of the few sports where men, women, transgender, and binary people could all race against each other. There is no separation of gender. It's really something where I do see what Devon's doing is bringing good attention, positive attention to the LGBTQA community and to motorsports.
Yeah, I definitely think that this could potentially make people feel a lot more comfortable being themselves. As we all know, we live in a society that's very judgmental, and people really watch you closely, and and some people in certain environments they don't feel like they can truly be themselves, so they'll like be like partial to themselves, maybe about 50%, but really conceal who they really are. But moving forward, as NASCAR is trying to promote a message of being more inclusive and welcoming people, as I've always said, from all walks of life, I really think that this can open the door for something great as NASCAR continues to have more progressive change and advance well into the future. And next, gonna look at a story that was published in the race. In an article published by Jack Benyon, we learned that 2009 F1 World Champion Jenson Button was set to race for Arrow McLaren SP this year in the NTT IndyCar Series. Unfortunately, the pandemic put an end to those plans. Button said he was supposed to test an IndyCar for McLaren, but it never happened with the pandemic causing changes to the schedule. And he wanted to run the road courses, but no oval tracks. And Button has been quoted multiple times in the past saying that racing on oval tracks isn't something that he's interested in. And just learning all of this, Joe, I'm thinking, wow, what a disappointing development for IndyCar. A Formula One world champion and high-profile name in motorsports could have made his IndyCar debut, but it wasn't meant to be this time around. Jenson Button in IndyCar would certainly bring more attention to the series on both a national and international level. We'll have to wait and see if he'll get another chance to race in IndyCar later on. Now it's time for some quick takes.
Some big news involving a championship winning GT racing team. TF Sports will move up to LMP2 in the European Le Mans Series later this year. TF Sports is partnering with a new team called Racing Team Turkey. Leading the lineup will be Turkish driver Saleh Yoluk, Charlie Eastwood, and Harry Tinklo completes the ELMS driver lineup.
Sean Creech Motorsports is entering the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship with an LMP3 program. The number 33 Ligier JSP3 will run for the LMP3 Championship with drivers Joao Barbosa and Lance Wilsey. Jan Claret and Wayne Boyd will complete their Rolex 24 lineup.
After it was announced that Chris Moniz won't be the spotter for Kyle Larson, Henrik Mercer's team, Tyler Mond has been named the spotter for the number 5 Chevrolet. Of course, we all know what happened with Chris Moniz with the Twitter account that came under fire for liking tweets and that sharing views many found troublesome. Kyle Larson, of course, he is in the attempt to repair his image for the 2021 and try to get sponsorships later on the season. Hendrick decided to replace Moniz with Tyler. So it's definitely one of those things where this is a story we'll be checking it out. And of course, we encourage everyone to see last week's episode of Live News.
RSS Racing is taking its NASCAR Xfinity Series program to the next level. After growing as an organization and enjoying great success with Ryan Sieg driving a Chevrolet, the team will switch manufacturers. Sieg showed what he could do in 2020 as the team aligned with Richard Childress Racing, enjoying a career year. In 2021, RSS Racing will switch to Ford and have Roush Yates engines under the hood. Backing from Ford Performance will certainly be beneficial for a team on the rise.
Adam Stern from the Sports Business Journal reports that NASCAR is considering sliding the numbers back onto cars similar to what we saw at the NASCAR All-Star race at Bristol. NASCAR feels it might be beneficial for sponsorship opportunities. However, there is a lot of division when it comes to this topic. Some believe that the door numbers just stay on the doors and not slide to the back. Some do feel this is a great business opportunity. Others feel like this ruins the looks of the car. This is definitely a move for NASCAR, and it's something we're going to be following.
Vassar Sullivan Racing announced 2 drivers to his Rolex 24 lineup. Recently, the team confirmed the 4 full-time drivers that will be a part of the 2-car Lexus GTD program competing for the championship. Zach Veach and Frankie Montecalvo in the number 12 Lexus, then Jack Hawksworth and Aaron Talitz in the number 14. Townsend Bell returns to the number 12 for the Rolex 24, but he won't run the full schedule with the team this year. The next driver announcement was kind of shocking since he announced his retirement from Corvette Racing. Oliver Gavin will join Hawksworth and Talitz in the number 14 Lexus, and it's certainly going to be weird seeing a successful Corvette legend driving a different car in a different class.
one of the big things, Paul Miller Racing will return to GTD racing for a full season in IMSA with Brian Sellers and Madison Snow driving the number 48 Lamborghini GT3. The team won't have the number 48 though in the Rolex 24 Hours because Action Express Racing will be using that for Jimmy Johnson and his Ally Financial team in that race. Paul Miller will be using the number 1. Corey Lewis returns to endurance racing as well. The Lamborghini factory driver Andrea Caldarelli completes the driver lineup for Daytona.
The Rolex 24 entry list was released this afternoon with 50 cars entered for the twice around the clock endurance race across 5 classes. In DPI, we have 7 cars, no major surprises here. LMP2, 10 cars. That's amazing. Incredible growth for a struggling class. LMP3, first year in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, 7 cars for the Rolex 24. Definitely a solid start to the LMP3 era. GTLM, 6 cars, and we're lucky to get the same number of full-time entries from last season for Daytona, with Reese in the WeatherTech Racing Proton Porsche joining Corvette and BMW, and finally GTD, 20-car strong field with a diverse set of manufacturers.
That's going to do for our show. We're definitely getting to the point where we're out of time, but we definitely want to encourage everyone, take 5 minutes of your time, visit our Patreon page. Colin, he's definitely one of our Patreon subscribers. He gets all the information about where his money is being used to invest in making Grid Network better and better week in and week out. Definitely encourage you to join Colin, show your support for our channel here at the Grid Network. And of course, tomorrow we'll be having another show with racers, the girls behind the helmet, as we talk about some of the women racing this upcoming weekend. Plus, Alice Powell and Marta Gardner from the W Series. The 2021 season is looking to be very exciting. We invite you to follow us on Twitter, Grid Ranking, and Grid World Motorsport League. And of course, our sponsor, Publis. Link below gets you a 10% discount for being a Grid Network viewer. For Kobe Lambeth at the Podium Finish, I'm Joe Samaniego. Thank you for watching. Stay safe. We'll see you next time. Joe Samaniego here. Want to invite you to go check out Publis. Publis is a dog clothing and accessory company based in Austria. 10% of each of your purchases goes to helping dogs in need, whether it's homeless, sick, or ill dogs. This is one of the reasons why we support it. Kiska here is a rescue dog from rural Alaska and our Grid office dog. We care about our furry buddies, and we know you do as well. Definitely check out Publis.com. There's a link on the video description, and by clicking on that link, you get a 10% discount on your purchase as well.